Meeting of the corporate library. We have a set order of business. As you may have known, if you've looked through the bylaws, makes for a full agenda. But I'm hereby calling this meeting to order. Start out with a few remarks of mine, and then we'll go on with the rest of the agenda. I would say that, first of all, it's been a good year for the library. Continues to develop and expand its vital role in the cultural, social, and educational lives of our service communities. Usage is continuing its post-pandemic increase, and the monthly staff report, if you had to keep track of that, details the wide range of programs and assistance Patent Free Library provides. Outreach, for just one example, continues to grow in both the amount and type, and kudos to everyone involved in that. Financially, the annual fund goal exceeded its target in this past fiscal year, building on the success of the previous year when fundraising also exceeded the original goal. Due to the fundraising success of the development office, i.e. Samantha and those who help her, and the increased generosity of donors such as you. We have, believe it or not, a small budget surplus this year, unlike last fiscal year, thanks to the careful financial management of the institution. You'll hear more about that a little bit later. Physical plant, important needs are being addressed in reference to the capital needs assessment and other recognized priorities. You'll hear more from Leslie and Dean Emerson about that a bit later. That being said, the library faces increasing challenges. Financial, both in the operations and capital investment aspects of the budget, building and equipment, collection development, and other areas. That's where all of us can play a role in helping the library fulfill its mission. As you know from the role of the Corporator document, we should endeavor to support the library's growth and development, including its programs and policies, assist with fundraising activities, as well as contribute ourselves, and keep abreast of the library's work, offering comments or suggestions as appropriate. Nothing is set in stone, of course. The bylaws allow amendment of the Corporator role as we deem appropriate. And as you've seen, the agenda tonight includes a discussion of the Corporator's role and function, one of the topics being examined by our new governance committee. I hope you've been able to give this some thought and that we can have a robust conversation on the subject. That is only one item, however, in a full and varied group of subjects we'll cover tonight. So let's get started. First of all, I want to announce changes in corporate membership and also recognition of service. Regarding corporators who are no longer, or former corporators, who for one reason or another are no longer occupying that office. 2 corporators have resigned, Ellen Gall and Peggy Mellon. 3 corporators have moved, Steve Brackett, Paul Kochstein, and Berlin Verville. And sadly, 2 corporators have passed away, Lloyd Combs and Mary King. Being a corporator, as you know, has lifelong tenure, but we want to recognize those people who have reached anniversary milestones in their role as corporators. First of all, 5 years as corporators: Sally Johnstone, Evan Lamb, Judy Metcalf, and Vicki Panko. If any of you are here, please come up and give you a token of our appreciation. Here you go. For the good health.
Again.
10 years as corporators: Sam Lambert and Maria Morris. 15 years, Jim Tolan. 20 years, Susan Beagle and David Miller. Okay. 50 years, 2003. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. She always brings her dog.
Are you David? 30 years as corporators. Ruth Lawson Stops and Margaret Totten. It just seemed like yesterday. Thank you so much. And 45 years as a corporator, Sally Gray. We'll move on to the call of the roll. Eileen?
Hello, everyone. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name, but if you would please call yourself present if you are here. And how we do the people that are on Zoom.
They need to people on Zoom, unmute yourself to call, to say here.
So I don't know if you heard that, Zoom people, but if you could mute yourself when you hear your name to say you are present. Carl Albrecht.
Present.
Michael Ambler. Jim Atherton. Stephen August.
Present.
Susan Beagle. Present. Mary Louise Blanchard.
Here.
Barbara Boyce.
Present.
Walter Graves. Louise Bryant. I don't think that was a present. Laura Lee Chadwick.
Kind of scary.
Juliana Cliff.
Hmm.
Jonna Conathan. Karen Cowan.
Present.
C.R. Davis. Sally Davis.
Present.
Tommy Davis.
Present.
Julia DeBerry.
Present.
Joe Drago.
Present.
Susan Dublin. Leona Dufour. Fotini Eberhard. Margaret Edwards. Carrie Emerson.
Present.
Dean Emerson.
Present.
Lou Ensel. Mari Iasco. David Fluharty. Andrea Galuza. Lynn Gilliam. Libby Glavitz.
Here.
Bruce Goodwin. Bob Gravino. Sally Gray.
Here.
Spencer Gray. Eileen Harkin. Joel Hatch. Roger Hurd.
Present.
Allison Hepler. Keith Hines.
Present.
Linda Hoch. Hope. Randy Howell. Susan Hummer.
Present.
Catherine Jacobs. Marie James.
Present.
Sally Johnstone. Grace Jones.
Here.
Peggy Kapasowski.
Present.
Mary Ellen Kazimer. Rick Kessler. William King. Elizabeth Lakeman. Evan Lamb. Sam Lambert. Ruth Lawson Stotts. Present. Dawn Lee. Jack Limpert. Janine Lippert.
Here. Present.
Carolyn Lockwood. John Marsh. Lori Martin. Michael Mason. Vanessa Mayer. Present. Elizabeth McCurdy. Present. James McGowan.
Here.
Judy Metcalf. David Miller.
Present.
Maria Morris.
Present.
Jennifer Odellifson. Aaron Park. Diane Patterson. James Peavy. William Racine.
He's here, he's his chat, he doesn't have a mic.
Gotcha. Wendy Reed. Barbara Reinertsen. Present. Julie Rice.
Present.
Michelle Rhines.
Present.
Cheryl Ritchie. Hank Simpson. Stephen Singer. Haley Smith. Brian Stanton. Mary Swain.
Present.
Vicki Tanko. Present. Ken Texter. Jim Tolan.
Present.
Margaret Totten. Leslie Trundy.
Present.
Sandra Weiss. Linda Wood. Catherine Young. Gwen Ziborowski. Leah Zartarian. Present. John Zittle.
Present.
That is it. Thank you. One more left. Okay. Okay, sorry. Reading of the records, apparently, we have to approve the minutes as recorded Monday, October 17th, 2022, which was the 176th annual meeting of the Corporators. Do we have, I would invite a motion to approve the minutes.
I so move.
Have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Oops. Thank you.
Going to do a seamless transition here. My name's Steve August. I'm the chair of the governance committee. And one responsibility that was adopted by the governance committee was the task of developing a list of nominations to bring before the annual meeting for the corporators, for the trustees and officers of the trustees. So I'd like to give our report if I could. Although there are vacancies on the list of corporators, I think the corporators are capped at 100 by bylaws, but there are a few vacancies as Carl indicated in the death and resignation. But at this time, the nominating committee or the governance committee is not advancing any name, for the Board of Corporators. For nominations for trustee, we would like to place, the following names forward, bring forward the following names forward. Allison Heffler, for her third year term, Allison's from Woolwich. Peggy Kekowski, Georgetown, for her first three-year term. Peggy now is on the trustees, but filling out a vacancy left by the resignation of a Georgetown resident. Richard Kessler, from Bath for his third three-year term, and Dawn Lee of West Bath for her second third three-year term. So I'd like to place those names for the corporators and have a motion. I suppose I should open for other nominations from the floor if there are any. And if not, if I could get a motion to advance.
I so move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And now the other responsibility that falls to governance is to recommend the officers of the corporation. And the governance committee would like to bring forward Carl Albrecht as president, Michael Mason vice president, Eileen Harkins treasurer or secretary, excuse me, and Anthony Jameson treasurer. Are there any other nominations for? If not, if I could get a motion to advance that.
I so move.
Second.
Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Third, we do elect a liaison from among the corporators to liaise with the trustees. Typically, it's the person who attends trustee meeting. Livy Galvitz currently serves. And Livy, are you willing to be liaison again?
If nobody else wants to do it, sure.
Enthusiastic,
Yes, yes, sure.
Recommendations for volunteers to serve as corporator liaison. If not, I move that we I would take a motion that we put Livy's name forward. I so move for the corporators. We have a motion, a second. I'll be a second. Take two. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of Livy's nomination?
Aye.
Any opposed? If not, thank you. Thank you, Livy. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you. All right, so now I'm gonna, chat with you all for a little bit, and I can just tell you, it's so great to see everyone. So if you could just share the screen a little bit. I often don't get out of my office as much as I would like to, and so there are a lot of faces that I don't see that regularly. I know many of you come in to borrow materials and attend programs, but I thank you so much for those of you here in person and those of you on Zoom. Okay, so I'm gonna try to keep my remarks pretty short tonight because we have a lot of other presentations, especially one by the Building and Technology Committee, which I think you're gonna be very excited to hear about, especially Susan Beagle over there. I think about you a lot as we've been working on our strategic plan. This is something we've been talking a lot about, the big reveal of HVAC and others. So this is something I know Susan feels very passionate about, and we've had lots of conversations and amongst this group, Holden as well. So I will turn this on. that's what it's supposed to do, okay? All right, so, what I want to talk about tonight are just some of the highlights of our last fiscal year, but I want to spend a bit more time talking about some of the exciting things that are coming up in the next year. And we've got a really busy year ahead of us. As Carl mentioned, we had a very robust, lot of programs, wonderful things happening. We've also had some challenges with some building repairs needed with some funding things that are, coming up. And but all in all, we've just had a terrific year. Thanks in part to all of our corporators, trustees, everyone that volunteers, all the wonderful staff, donors, volunteers. It takes a whole group of us to make this vibrant library that we have. So I love this picture. This I want to talk about first. So this is the spelling bee. How many of you, raise your hand if you attended the spelling bee? So if not, I want to see next year when I ask the same question, I expect all of your hands to go up because we are doing a second annual spelling bee. So this, what I love about this event, so I'm going to start out on the highlight. This was probably one of the most exciting fundraisers in my 13 years that we've had with the library. It wasn't necessarily one that made the most money, but it was one that engaged the community like we had never engaged the community before in a fundraiser. And I love this picture because this is Brian Stanton, who was our MC of the evening, a teacher at Morse High. And we also, for the first time, had teens attend a fundraiser. It was a multi-generational event. And they had, I think two groups from Morse High. So this might have been the literati. There were two groups, and I'm not sure, but this may have been the literati group. And of course, there is Dean's daughter. Don't tell me. Tell me her name. Natalie. So is right there as well, and she was on the what place did they get third place? Second. All right. So so this sort of goes back to our mission, and I love this mission. I never get tired of this mission. And our last strategic plan in 2012, 2013, of which I think David Miller was on the strategic planning committee, Susan Beagle, anyone else in this room was, but we crafted a new mission statement, and it's still very valid, and I still love it. One of the things I love most about it is the part that I highlighted in red. So we transform lives, we inspire lifelong learning, we preserve local history. We've got a room behind me to prove it. And we build community through joyful, creative exploration and dialogue. And I just love the word joyful. And not only do I love the word joyful, I think I saw the Portland Public Library's mission statement, and they use the word joy in there as well. So I think they stole it from us, but it's how I feel every day, and I hope that you all feel that way as well when you think about the library, when you come to visit the library. So I just have to highlight, and I have to really especially thank Samantha for putting together a fantastic event. So I'm going to just start with this, just with some pictures. So the winning team was, what was the name of your team?
The Orchard Shores Murder Club.
The Orchard Shores with Carrie and Mary Ellen Casimir and Andy Barber, and the fourth was
Sue North.
Okay, Sue North won the whole shebang, but we had, what I love about these, so these are some pictures of the teams. There are people I had never seen before that came out for this. So one of the things what's the point on this? So in the corner down there, this was the ABCD team. And if you see their, the album cover, what would it say? It said, I can't see it from here. Highway to Spell instead of Highway to Hell, which is their Highway to Spell. They brought like air guitar. I mean, it was absolutely, these are people, none of them who I've ever seen before. It's so exciting. We also had Leah had a team from Georgetown. I think they're in another picture. We had a group down here, and I can't remember. What? West Bath. I'm sorry, West Bath. And what was the name of your team?
I can't remember.
So we also had the Sellers and Spellers, which was the real estate brokers had a Sellers and Spellers. I can't remember the name of this team, But they had, when they got their, word right, they would blow, horns and throw confetti. So, I can say it was an absolute amazing night. And you can see the people in the audience got into it as well. Then we had paper and pens, people could participate, and I think we're gonna even expand on that in the next year. So this sort of embodies to me what the library is all about. You know, we did it with education, we've had, you know, multi-generational, we had fun. And we raised money. So I just wanted to start out with the exciting. So again, it's going to happen. I don't know where or exactly when, but I hope you will mark your calendars and be able to attend. It is a blast. Okay, there we go. So the movie goers, Barbara Ryanson, which I've heard that your spelling is one of your areas of. So we have the movie, so you can see there, so there's Celebrate, there is it, Celebrate. And there's Shauna and the Literatis and the other Spellbinders, movie stars. The West Bath
Wonders.
there you are.
We were gonna be Rocks and Dogs, but because we had 2 retired geologists and 2 retired
Rocks and
physicians.
Dogs.
Next year.
Next year.
That's for sure.
Next year. So next year, we really want to get a team from every town to make this, you know, so, Ross didn't have a team. Roger.
We're not good spellers.
All right, what about Suki? Is Suki a good speller? All right, I'm challenging you to get an Aroustic team together. Okay. There you go. I know you were at the event, Roger.
I bet Barbara and Karen are good.
We'll work on it. So it was a great event. So we did have a great year. So Samantha put together this wonderful slide I just wanted to share with you. So this is sort of a year by the numbers for last year. Numbers definitely do not tell the whole story, but they do tell a compelling story, especially when you look at the next slide that I put together. You can see we have seen between fiscal year 21-22 and 22-23 a big jump in many of our service areas and in the number of visitors we've had in the library. So you've seen our paper visits have gone up, circulation has gone up, our ebook and audiobook borrowing, which is already high, has gone up. Reference transactions, so our interactions that we have with people in person, on the phone, via email, those have all gone up. And in-person programs, although you can't see because it's so much smaller number than the other, that's a pretty significant increase from 327 to 400 programs. So if you think about that, 400 programs in a year, if you subtract the days were closed and holidays, that's more than 1 program a day. Often with children, there might be 2 or 3. We have story times twice a week. There's wonderful after-school activities. We have a Lego club. We just started a Minecraft club. We have homeschool socials. There's a Pokemon club. And then we have a lot of young adult programs, movie nights. We have a bunch of adult programs. Some new ones are Elizabeth Manning. I don't know, I should have introduced Elizabeth. Many of you have not met Elizabeth. She is our new assistant director who plays for Berta Jordan. So this is Elizabeth. If you've not met Elizabeth, we're so thrilled to have Elizabeth here. One of the things Elizabeth was doing is she brought with her, she worked at the Prince Memorial Library and she used to lead a book club there. And so she's leading an adult book club here. And we're doing some wonderful books. We did over the summer a pairing of Demon Copperhead and David Copperfield. And now she's doing book pairings. And they're on our website through the end of the year and into next, of a fiction and nonfiction title. So I recommend that. We have movie groups. There's a men's book discussion group. We have cookie decorating programs. We are we partner with the city of, or a climate action group of the city of Bath to put on climate conversations. We do this wonderful program called Repair Cafe. I don't know if any of you participated in that. We partnered with the Curtis Library and take turns having it. So we bring in experts, electricians, or anyone that has a skill, and then you can bring in your lamp and get it repaired or something that would fix. So that's been really, really popular as well. So we have a huge amount going on every day. What I love about it, I come here in the library and I work in this building and I still don't know what's going on half the time because there's so many things, and even I can't keep up. So, it's a great, so I wanted to talk with you a little bit about sort of where we're headed now into the next year. So we talked a bit about some of the statistics I just showed you. This is something Elizabeth put together, and I think it's really, really interesting. So we have noticed an increase, not only in reference transactions, but also in our group study room use and in wireless usage from the fiscal year 21-22 to 22-23. And what we discovered is these are some of the markers and the indicators that people are working remotely in the library. And we actually see it every single day. When I walk through the reading room, there are more and more people seated at all the tables with their computers and staying for a length of time. We're seeing it all throughout the building. One of the things we had to actually do was revise our group study room policy, which was originally for 2 or more people. We've had to change that to allow a single person to use it because we really have no other space when people need to have Zoom meetings or interviews or a work phone call. So one of the things we actually have just recently received, which you might have seen about it in the paper or on our website or in our e-news. Oh, before we get to that, though, I want you here is a prime example. This is something, this happened about 2 weeks ago. A gentleman, and he allowed me to take his picture, came in to use the library. He was dragging 2 huge bags in the building, and in there were his 2 monitors. I've never seen someone with 2 monitors and a laptop, and he was setting up to work. And he was here, would you say, Elizabeth, every day for almost a week?
Yeah.
So I had to go introduce myself and just find out, you know, why he chose the library to do his work. But look at it, Anthony, I know who's associated with Union and Co. This is the guy I was mentioning, who's just set himself up. Anyway, so the need is there. We just don't have the spaces. So we recently got an ARPA grant, an American Rescue Plan Act grant, for $100,000 for a remote work through libraries initiative, which is perfect timing for our strategic plan where we're assessing all of the spaces in the library and determining our needs. And so we have 3 years to spend the grant, but we, in our grant letter of interest, we indicated how we were going to spend the money, and these are the 3 ways we're going to spend it. The first thing we're going to do is to enhance the AV equipment that's in this room so that we don't have to use this owl, which, you know, is temperamental. We'll have cameras and speakers mounted on the ceiling. We will have a better way to set controls for recording meetings, for setting up where a presenter might be standing, and so you can get the best acoustics and best view of the room. So this will also be not only for presentations that the library has, it'll give us an opportunity to better record our own presentations and make them available on the web, or our YouTube channel or various ways, but it will also allow people that come to use the space that need to have hybrid meetings or online meetings, they can use the space and bring in groups to do this very thing. So we're excited about that in the coming months. Dean Emerson has been helping us with that project, and we'll be getting more an RFP and bids and working out this whole project. The second thing we're going to be doing is improving the accessibility entrance and walkways between the entrances. So the reason this falls into the grant is because having a more accessible building allows for more people to get in for remote work. So we identified this in our strategic plan, so it all fits very nicely together. The exciting thing about this accessibility entrance is we're working with the city of Bath on this project. The city recently was awarded a grant to improve, they're going to be improving the lighting in the park. They're going to be, doing some upgrades and fixing of things in the gazebo that are falling apart. There's going to be, some EV charging stations put in as part of the grant, as well as some public art. But one of the things, as we began to talk about this, they agreed to put in, they're going to, in this grant, it's going to be paying for the paving of the walkway between Summer Street all the way to the entrance of the park, which was part of our project. So it's a great partnership. The city will be covering that part of the grant, and then the other part of the grant will be, fixing the slope toward, of the accessibility entrance, children's entrance. We're gonna be replacing the step. It's kind of a cobbled step that's a tripping hazard with a solid step. And we're gonna be putting in more railings. So that's kind of the essence of that project. So we're really excited about that. And we're gonna be using half of the money approximately from the grant for that project. The third part of this was what I was talking about creating, individual workspaces. We don't exactly know what that's gonna look like, but I have kind of a vision, and so I pulled some pictures from the internet just to kind of show you what could be. So we're looking at some versatile enclosed spaces that can be moved. A lot of these can be, we call them sort of work pods. And they have, a desk, they have a plug-in, they have lights, they have air that circulates, they have a bench or a table. So, and there's so many different types of these, and more are popping up, all the more and more companies that are doing this. This bottom one here is actually a 2-person one. So we're gonna be looking at some things like that again, that not built-ins, but things that can be moved around. So as the needs of the library changes, then that we can move them or remove them or add to them as we need. So this is really, it's all very exciting parts of the project, but I'm particularly excited about this because we have such a huge need. I don't know how many of them we'll get or what size they'll get or what exactly they'll look like, but we're starting to investigate our options there. Okay, so at the last year's meeting, I talked a lot about the strategic plan, and I want to just give you an update of some of the things that this year, and I sort of gave away one reveal, which will be another reveal, which is the HVAC, what we're doing on that front. So I'm just going to go through a few goals and actions really quickly, and then we'll move on. But so the first goal was to create broader and deeper relationships throughout our library communities. And I'll say one thing we did, I think having that fundraiser with bringing in the generations is a good example of that, although we have a lot more work we're going to be doing. But goal 2, facility, we've spent a lot of our energy on this goal this year to maintain and enhance the physical plant and technology systems in support of the library's mission. So one of the objectives was to plan for a building-wide HVAC system. And I will say there has been a tremendous amount of work done by the Building and Technology Committee, of which our chair, Karen Robbins, has graciously agreed to attend tonight and answer any questions as we go through our evening. So I didn't realize you had this as a transition. Okay. Review the 2020 air conditioning feasibility study, which we have done. Select a preferred system, you're going to hear more about that, and create an implementation plan, which we're working on now. Income and funding to ensure sustainable income streams to meet the current and future needs of the library. This is an extremely important one, as Carl mentioned. We rely, for example, very heavily on our endowment to fund the operations of the library. In this past fiscal year, it was about 43% of our operating came from the 5% draw from the endowment, and that number keeps going up. So while on the other hand, the market it keeps going down, and the amount that we can draw is actually, we're starting to see our first downward slope. So that being said, we have challenges ahead of us. But we need to increase capacity to invest in our historic building. So we've talked about in the strategic plan, creating and implementing a plan to build capital reserves, and then plan for a capital campaign in support of goal 2, which is the facility goal, which is to enhance the facilities of the library. So we've had our first initial capital campaign committee meeting. we don't have a lot to share on that front yet. Because one of the things, Dean's gonna be making a presentation about where we are with the building sustainability and HVAC project. But we are looking into some potential funding, sources there, including some efficiency main money, maybe some loans, some grants. So, but it's all sort of, packaged together, and, we have a lot of capital needs. And so we know that we are gonna need a capital campaign. Okay, so objective 3, to improve accessibility to and within the library's physical plant. So we are gonna be, we started some of that. We did the ADA of the external part of the building, and are working on that as part of this grant and working with the city. We also do already we have somewhat of a report. We have Carl referenced a capital needs assessment, which gives us an idea of what building issues we need to address and systems need to be replaced over the next 20 years. So we pay close attention to that as we're planning. And then coordinate with the city of Bath to improve parking lot safety and accessibility, which we're working on that very thing right now. So these are all things that are happening and very exciting. So I want to, for sake of time, keep moving along, because we're gonna have some more conversations with the Building and Technology Committee as they talk about where we've been and where we're headed. Okay, so next. Treasurer's report.
Boy, Leslie, that's a little tough to follow up. And I will say, you also stole a few points from what I was gonna mention. So, we might hear a few redundancies. For those of you who don't know, I'm Anthony Jameson. I am the current and ongoing treasurer. Thank you for approving me. I want to highlight a few things. One is, as you've already heard, we had a great year, which is evident by, thinking in a financial perspective, we were in the black, which is really, really good to see in a nonprofit, especially. I've been involved in a few, and it's not always the case. And especially given that we saw some increases that we were not anticipating, such as fuel, oil, and electricity costs. They were much, much higher than we had originally predicted. And given that, we still were able to be in the black, which we're really happy about. But I want to focus a little bit on the endowment. So as Leslie mentioned a little bit, over the last about a dozen years or so, I think is in that report, we'll say dozen years, the endowment draw has increased from being 30% of the total revenue to nearly this year 42% of total revenue. Over the same period of time, we've seen the municipal contributions go down from 40% of total revenue to nearly 29% total revenue for this past year. So I'm going to break down the numbers for you, because it wouldn't be a treasurer's report without one. For the 2011-2012 fiscal year, the endowment draw was $202,859, which is 30%. Municipal contributions that year were $271,767, or 40%. Fundraising was $135,188, 135, yeah. And then that was 20%. And then $60,502, or 9%, was other income. Other income includes disbursements from the Frank Given Trust, fines and fees, and the Bath Historical Contribution. For this past fiscal year, 22-23, the endowment draw was $410,641, or 42%. Municipal contributions were $293,115, or 29%. And fundraising was $196,460, or 20%. And other income, as it has most of the time through the 12-year period, is at 9%, which is $88,474. So there's a few things that you'll see in there, is that fundraising stays about the same for percent of budget as does other income. The flip-flop there would be the endowment has taken over the majority of the budget, while the municipal contributions are at 29%. It's something to keep in mind as we see that our reliance on the endowment to balance the budget has really become more imperative. We are just a little sneak peek looking into the next year's budget. It's really becoming really imperative, becoming even larger, even as the amount that we can draw goes down. Given the way that we do it, we're looking that it's really important that we have that endowment. We'll get to the strength of it in just a moment. It's also something to keep in mind as we ask for further municipal contributions. It's always something that is tough to do because it's just a tough subject. It's tough to talk about getting more and really showing value for it, but it's really something that we need to keep in mind as we're going to towns asking for more money, to look at the way the budget is balanced and how we're getting it. And as we talk about the strength and going forward and how we can be sustainable, thinking of it in that way is really something important. One thing I wanted to highlight was the overall increase for municipal contributions from 2011 to now is a total of 22,000. From 2011 to now, it's 22,000 more than it was then, where the endowment draw has increased over $200,000. So with that, the endowment remains really strong. So we have talked about how the market, obviously it goes up and down. We are in the Star Fund with Vanguard, which is a really sort of moderate fund. We will see around 6.5% from interest and dividends on year to year. This past year, we ended last fiscal year at 7.5 million. So that's on June 2022 with 7.5 million. This year we ended this fiscal year, June 30, 2023 at 7.9 million and change. So you'll see that that's an increase of around 5% from last year. Now, remember, we drew $410,000 during that time frame. So all things considered, the endowment is strong. We won't talk about when it was 9 million because that didn't really happen. But now it is strong. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Could I ask you a question?
No question. Just gonna get to you, of course.
Where do you account for the bookstore and the Friends contribution? In here?
The Friends,
Does that net out?
no, the Friends contribution, I think, is included in total fundraising, so that includes, it is part of fundraising, yes. And I will send around, I'll send it in the next, after this meeting, when I send the remote, link to the meeting, the Zoom link, I will also send the funding history he's referring to, and that has it all in there, but you'll see it's got notes. The fundraising total does include the Friends contribution.
Any more questions?
Ready reports?
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Dean Emerson. I'm the Technology Director for RSU1. I'm a relatively new member of the Building and Technology Committee, as well as a trustee. I'm joined this evening by Karen Robbins, who is the chair of our committee. She has been working tirelessly with Leslie and others on the Building and Technology Committee, looking at, in particular, HVAC, and John Zittel is here as well. So as we go through, they may have things to add or questions that come up that they'd be better suited to answer. Here we go. So our goal this evening is just to give you a short overview of the Building and Technology Committee, an overview of our needs, how that aligns with the strategic plan, and take a look at some of the upgrades that are on the way, because we think you'll be really excited about what we have in the works. So, looking back over time, the Building and Technology Committee was formed in roughly 2018, had its first meeting. In 2020, we had a capital needs assessment that was commissioned. I think Leslie brought up earlier that in 2020, they looked at an AC feasibility study, which was actually, if I saw the notes, from 2015.
Yes.
So the need for air conditioning has been on people's minds for some time. Back in 2021, we had an updated, basically an assessment of the capital needs by Onsite Insight Incorporated. That's a mouthful, Onsite. 2022, we accepted the new strategic, or adopted the new strategic plan, and the committee, the Building and Technology Committee, has been charged with developing a plan to implement those steps. And in 2023, we started work. Any questions thus far? All right, so here are a couple of highlights. Improving the entrance for ADA compliance, as you heard earlier, that's in progress and in partnership with other entities here and back. Taking a look at the carpet in the children's room was one of the items. Apparently it's well overdue, it gets a lot of use. Repairing or replacing the floor in the staff room, that actually has been completed. Updating the lighting throughout the library and the grounds. That one's part of the project. Updating the audio video equipment in this community room, as you heard earlier, that was in part, at least, going to be funded through the ARPA grant. That's ongoing. And roof repairs. And I'm sorry, I can't quite read the bottom. What's that? Okay. So, one of the questions that we were going to ask, although I think we've given it away at this point, what would be the most impactful update that we might consider to serve the community here at the Patent Free Library? I'll give you a little bit of wait time on this one. Any guesses? Anybody? All right, here we go. Air conditioning. All right, so yes, we know everybody would be very pleased to hear that air conditioning is part of the new project. Okay, so here we go. What are we looking at? Right now, we're looking at a VRF heat pump system. Okay, we started out, we looked at lots of other options. In particular, we looked at geothermal, and for a variety of reasons, we've come to what we believe is a better solution for our particular setting here, which is a heat pump system. This would include both heating and cooling. Building automation controls, because we do not have a facilities director for the library who can, make sure that the HVAC system is running at peak efficiency all the time. We are considering automation controls to automate that and make sure that the system is running as efficiently and reliably as possible. We're looking at lighting upgrades, emergency lighting replacement, roofing repairs and updates, and a roof-mounted solar array. These are some renderings that we asked the architects or engineers to put together for us, so you could get a sense of what these solar arrays would look like, what the HVAC system would look like. Those items right up there are what you would actually see from the ground. Just barely can sort of see them. They're intended to be as low profile as possible to make sure that we maintain the historic nature of the building. We don't have any unsightly, anything that people can see would be unsightly. This is what those units actually look like, excuse me, up on the roof. And from above, I believe it was 123 or 127 solar panels, I forgot. What is it? 159, thank you. All right. So that's what the renderings look like, just to give you a sense of the building's exterior. We've partnered with EMC, the Energy Management Consultants of Portland. They have a lot of experience with not-for-profits in particular, libraries, schools, and other entities. They were willing to work with us, which was a big part of it. We have our own needs, right? We have our own way of doing things. And we did have additional partners that we looked at, that we considered. And we did have site visits with other interested parties. But in the end, they really recommended that we work with EMC. And they said, even if we'd gone further with them, that they thought this would be a better fit for us. They are efficiency main approved, which is critical to the success of the program, because a lot of the things that are aligning right now that make this possible or feasible is rebates, energy rebates, and they need to be done through approved efficiency main dealers. So we've currently entered into a letter of intent to continue developing and exploring the details of the project, excuse me. And EMC, if we move forward and we're all happy with it, they would oversee all aspects of the project via turnkey solution. So they would basically act as engineers and general contractors for us. Why now? Right now, it's just a combination of things, right? We have really attractive incentives that are available, and we have building needs that align right now. We have some roof work that needs to be done. We've got the HVAC system that needs to be updated, and we have a significant need for lighting. Energy savings wise, we're going to see all sorts of improvements by just replacing like the lighting as an example. there's a tremendous savings to be made there. And we would be able to offset some of the costs by the solar power that we would be generating. So. Our next steps as we look forward, EMC is finalizing the design and drafting bid documentation. They'll handle the RFP process for us. The finance committee is developing a funding path to support this. Leslie is working with them on a financing plan as part of that funding. And then hopefully we'll have a final contract signed. Once that happens, the project would require another 9 to 10 months to completion. So, I think it's safe to say that we are moving forward, and it's reasonable to think that this, barring anything unforeseen, that this will be happening fairly soon. Inquiry for the group. You have, yeah.
I think this is just great. I'm really excited about it. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, fine.
I second the just great, and it's especially cool to see the solar aspect of it to help with climate change. I do wonder though, are there any plans for backup generating capacity so that we can keep the library up and going during a storm? Because one good goal for this project is to turn us into both a warming and a cooling center if need be, and I just wondered if that's included, if the solar could do that?
Well, the good news is that we have a heating plant that's in relatively good shape. It needs some updates. But this system will actually run in parallel with that, so that in the event that this system is down for repairs, we have a large storm or something like that, the existing system would be maintained so that it would be able to step in and keep us going for a short period of time in the event of a storm or something like that.
So even without power from the city?
I don't, no,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
she's talking about generators.
Just purely on a generator? No, I'm sorry. I thought you meant in terms of like generating heat. But no, it does not currently involve a standby generator. Yeah. Karen?
I was gonna speak to that.
Go right ahead.
About a year ago, the building committee considered getting a generator to keep us going as a warming station in particular. And when we looked at how many hours we were offline compared to the cost of investing in the system, we stepped back from that, which I think it's not to say it's a final decision. I think if we start having more and more outages that may occur, maybe in the summer, more often, we might revisit that.
So for anybody who couldn't hear Karen, she basically was saying that the building committee did look at standby generation approximately a year ago. And when evaluating the cost of the generator versus the number of hours that we are without power at this location, it was determined at that time that it may not be reasonable for us to make that investment. But if that would change, then we could always revisit that. It's certainly not something that we wouldn't consider. It's just that at this time, it doesn't seem to be necessary to make the investment. Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up,
Hello again. And that is a hard act to follow for sure. I don't have any fancy slides. I'm just gonna give you an update on 22-23 development activities. On the fundraising side, as you heard before, we exceeded our goal. Our goal was $130,000 in fundraising, and we actually ended up, our annual fund total was $157,973. So round of applause for Samantha. Blood, sweat, and tears went into that. So anyway, that is one highlight. Another highlight is the Bath Daily Times digitization project, which if you haven't heard about this, it's going to digitize all our years of the Bath Daily Times newspaper. We raised $10,000 to complete the first batch of reels over the summer. That's in thanks in part to Corporators, I think, who banded together to help with that. But this is a $40,000 project that is ongoing. The Alfred Center Fund was awarded us $3,500 to support audiovisual upgrades in the community room. As far as events went, we had our first John Patton Society event since 2019. It was an afternoon tea with a presentation by Nathan Lippert on his research on the Bath Customs House. I attended. It was really interesting and great, and a lot of fun to see faces again in person, in real life. Free Coffee Fridays are back. Brackets Market and Solo Penne gave us free coffee to put out for our patrons for the months of February, March, April, and May. Took a break over the summer, and then the program started again in September with a donation from Dunkin' Donuts, and then is followed by Brackets for October. You heard a lot about Spelling Bee. It was the first fundraising event since March of 2020, and a huge success. emceed by Brian Stanton, as you heard. Word caller was Meg Barker, Fisher Mitchell librarian and owner of Embark Tours. There were 10 teams of adults and teens, and teams over 16 competed against each other. Winning team coming out of Woolwich, with Corporators Carrie Emerson and Mary Ellen Kastner for the winners. And then in the other category, TD Charitable Foundation gave us a $630 grant for board training, which was used at various webinars and training sessions over the year. So those are some highlights. If you have any further questions about development, Samantha can look. Thank you very much. On to
I already had my thunder stolen from Anthony. I'll make a few additional remarks about the endowment. One of the issues right now is that 2 years ago, the endowment lost about $2 million, and when the equities market took a dive. And so because of that, we're going to begin to be taking less from the endowment in the coming year or two. So this, we're right now looking, we're building the budget for the 24-25 budget year, and it's looking to be quite a challenge to make ends meet, given the reduced amount of endowment that we'll have, and the fact that we really need to bring up municipal funding more, I think, to really make ends meet. So, well, that's a problem that we're going to have to solve in the coming months. Another thing that we did as we're planning the coming budget is to take stock of our salaries for our employees and make sure that we are offering a competitive and fair wage. And we did find there were a couple of areas that we wanted to make more than a cost of living increase, and so we are going to be doing a couple percentage points in some employee pay for this coming fiscal year. Another thing that our committee has begun to do is to develop more coherent financial procedures, or just protocols and procedures for handling money, for double checking work and that sort of thing that exists currently, but it's sort of scattered, and so we're consolidating that stuff. And an important thing that we did, which is in furtherance of the strategic plan, is we created a subcommittee to study the municipal funding model that we currently use, how we decide to divvy up the operating costs amongst the member towns. So we've had a few meetings. We have a few ideas that are churning right now, and I think that work will continue in the coming 6 months or so. Probably we'll have some result. And that's about it.
I have I guess I'd say, impression that grants have become a steadily increasing important element in the financial life of the museum. Certainly in addition to the ones that Eileen mentioned, Leslie mentioned a couple of major grants that have come in, but it's hard to know how important they are in the life of the museum, or the library, excuse me, because we don't see them as part of the financial reporting. So I can't help but wonder whether is your committee, or should your committee be giving a little thought to how might you build planning and reporting on grants into the overall financial reporting?
Well, grants have traditionally been more of a fundraising undertaking, or something that the librarian will do directly it is part of the finance committee's, discussion every week of like, what's going on with the grants or whatever. But, we do have grants in our financial reports. I don't know, unless you want to.
I'll say we're, especially in our monthly profit and loss, we're really working on making sure that other income, when we have grants, that you can see the money coming in and the money going out. So that's all part of the profit and loss statement, and it is represented in the financial review that's done every year as well. I'm not sure if that answers your question, though.
There's been a ton of action in the grants space, associated with the pandemic too, and I think we'll probably see fewer, things like the ARPA grants will be going away, in the next, well, they're probably already going away, really, but, energy grants are still abundant, and hopefully grants will be part of the overall financial solution for this, HVAC project. And our committee will be working with the Building and Tech Committee and with the MC and with, hopefully some lenders to make that happen. Oh, one thing I'll mention that Dean did mention that I think is an interesting point, I don't have any of the numbers from those spreadsheets, but one of the side effects of this energy project will be a large reduction in energy cost for the library in the future. So it is not only great to have air conditioning, but it'll also reduce our yearly outlay for energy by, what was like 40 or 50,000 bucks, wasn't it something like that, Dean? Do you remember? It was.
Yeah, I forget exactly.
It was a non-trivial amount of savings, so it should really help our budgeting process, in a couple of years, quite a bit. Any other questions?
Can I just ask the person who asked the question about the grants, what would be helpful for you to see? I'm also on the finance committee, so I was wondering what.
I don't know what I don't know, I do. Leslie mentioned $100,000 grant. She mentioned the possibility of some other grants. I have the suspicion that grants are becoming very important in the life of the museum. Or I keep saying that, I'm sorry, in the life of the library. And that they may be even more important than the dollar figure suggests, because they might be associated with very public-facing kinds of activities. So if they're being handled as sort of an individual event-driven, individual grant-driven kind of off-the-books process, as opposed to being part of our overall budgeting and planning, it just appears sitting out here that we might be confusing ourselves a little bit by not having that whole picture in our mind of how important an element of our overall budget grants really are. So I'm having trouble formulating the question because I don't know exactly how important they are, but I have the sense they've been getting steadily more important. And one seemed to me that you'd want to incorporate them into your overall budgeting and planning process.
Well, one thing I'll mention about that is that generally speaking, we don't incorporate grants as part of a planned budget because you never know if you're going to win it, and the grant landscape changes every year. So it's generally not something that we have put into our budgets. In my tenure, I've only been on this committee for a year, so I don't know, Leslie, you can probably say about prior years, but I don't remember seeing a budget, a library budget, where grants were part of the planned sources of revenue.
Yeah.
It's just too uncertain to really bank your operating budget on whether or not you get a grant. So we haven't really done that.
Colin, do you mind if?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add one quick thing regarding grants. It's something we have talked about just recently with our CPA, in fact, not necessarily about forecasting grants, but about tracking grants. Sometimes institutions will, if you use a grant in the same year, you might just net it out and you may not include it. So to your point, you wouldn't necessarily see that on the P and L at the end of the year. We talked about doing it a little bit differently so that you can see that the grant came in and what it used, even if it did net out in the same year. So to that point, in the future, with this $100,000 grant, you will be able to see that that came through and what it went to, even though it wasn't a part of the planned budget. You will be able to see that. So it'll sort of be outside, if you will, but you'll be able to see, okay, 100,000 came in, this is where it went to, and this is where it came from. So we do want to be able to see that, for your point there, for planning to know that that 100,000 came from somewhere where it might not usually, but also to kind of keep in mind that that could be something for the future.
Any other questions? You had your hand up before. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, the governance committee is next on the agenda. Governance is a new committee. We've only been, meeting perhaps, 4 or 5 months. The role, previous to that, I was the chair of the nominating committee, and the functions of the nominating committee become part of governance. So a lot of our discussion up to this point has been to develop an understanding among the committee members of what governance committee is about and what her function is going to be. I think most perhaps reduce it down as much as I can. The governance will be is very tasked to looking internally. You know, we're going to look at the board and understand how it functions and to make some recommendations and changes that hopefully will improve the functioning of the trustees and the corporators as a governance structure for the library. So, for example, governance is going to take on the responsibility of the assessment, the annual evaluation of the executive director. We are going to take on responsibility for board self-assessment to understand what capabilities and skills individual board members have and how we can use those skills and capabilities to, improve functioning of the library generally. Just to give you just a couple, and look at things like composition of the trustees, for example, and composition of the corporators. Just to give you a quick example, and one I use more often than not, the current composition of the board of the trustees includes representatives from RSU1 school district, but in fact, the library serves other school districts, Georgetown, West Bath, for example. So it's just understanding how we got to the point of saying, well, there should be RSU1 representation, but not West Bath representation or Georgetown representation. So we'll be looking at questions like that. I don't have our conversations are very much at the beginning stage. I think our subsequent reports are going to be much more interesting, perhaps, than this one. But hopefully, we're going to be productive and constructive. So, I don't know if there are any questions. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Leah Zuckerman, and I'm the chair of the Policy and Personnel Committee. This is my second year. And I wanted to just take the opportunity, because we have a few folks on Zoom, but Julie Rice has chaired this committee for a number of years, and she has left it really in great shape and very helpful to me, and continues to be on, so I want to thank her for that. We also have Keith Hines, he's a member of our committee, and he's only here today. I also want to thank Janine Lipford, who's also on Zoom, and she served this committee for many, many years, and did, put her resignation in this year. I wanted to thank her. We're a little bit of a different committee because, we are comprised of corporators and trustees. We also have our director, assistant director, Elizabeth Mann. We also have a part-time, employee, Sarah, and we get input from everybody in order to, review policies. And there's a routine where we review the policies about every 2 to 3 years. The existing policies, I meet with Leslie beforehand. And I would call attention that all of these policies are available on the library website for everyone to view, along with the bylaws. This past year, I think the exciting thing that we did happened this past July, where a fine-free policy for the library was put into place. And I think the staff was really receptive to that. And just to look at a little bit of wording from that, the elimination of daily fines for late materials will encourage the return of library materials and reinforce the positive relationship with our users. And this had been a policy that was in keeping with the American Library Association's resolution on monetary fines as a form of social inequity that was passed in 2019. Another example, our patron code of conduct, we adjusted some wording where library patrons may not take photographs, audio, or video recordings of staff without their permission. And that was an interesting addition. The other thing, which is a new one, was December of 2022, we instituted a corporate document and destruction policy, which outlined how long to, basically in what format to keep all of the records. And then I think moving to what Steve just mentioned, we're also taking a look at what the role is of the committee in context of this new governance committee, because in the past, the executive director evaluation was done by the policy and personnel committee. We do continue at this point, and maybe there'll be further discussion about doing the staff survey, which has been done on an annual basis for all of the library staff. There's a conflict of interest policy that's also been under the policy and personnel committee, and we're not sure if that's going to remain that way or not. And I think that's been it for last year. And I meet with Leslie beforehand, and she always calls attention to what needs to come up for review, and she's extremely knowledgeable about all the policies. So I'm grateful for her help. And I think that's it.
They're representative from the Friends.
I think Martha was gonna do it on Zoom. Is Martha here on Zoom? There she is. Oh, right, that's on mute, okay. So Marcia is here, and I think she was gonna give the Friends report on Zoom. Marcia?
Go pay off. Witnesses aren't American.
Hello.
And then can't subpoena them, exactly. Good, but they need a legitimate claim where we could be on the hook for bribery ourselves. What are they suing for? They witnessed multiple murders. That would be emotional distress. It might even subpoena them, exactly. Good, but they need a legitimate.
Okay. Yeah. Bart, are you ready to give the report for the Friends?
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was hitting the wrong unmute button. Sorry about that. So you want the report from the Friends? Well, we've had a pretty good year. We actually, I think you have it in front of you, and most of the year was very similar to as it has been in the past. We continue to support the Friends through fundraising, and we had 2 book sales, as well as the success of the bookstore, the library bookstore. We also were involved in the Starry Night by running the the bake sale, which isn't really a bake sale, but it does support the fun of the event. People enjoy having the homemade baked goods, and it does raise some funds. And we're also involved with the continuing to offer $1,000 matching fund for Giving Tuesday, which substantially, according to Samantha, substantially raised the number of people who pledged, who were lacking and or who had let their pledges lapse. They pledged again this year. We also continue to support the writing contest with a $500 donation for prizes. So do you have, one new thing that we're doing this year is we've become involved with the prisoners book, the prisoners library, prison library program, which at the current time is not active in Maine, but we certainly hope it will be before the end of the year. Do you have any questions? I guess one additional thing too is we also offered 250 bookstore gift certificates to encourage people to be active with the summer reading program.
Doesn't the Friends need a president?
Yes. We currently I'm trying to resign. I have stepped down, and we are looking for someone to take that position. New leadership. I will continue in a acting as president until we are able to recruit new leadership. Would anyone love to be president of Friends? It's not exactly being the Speaker of the House. It's really kind of a fun job.
Yes, we can listen.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Marcia.
Okay. You're welcome.
Is there anything that falls under unfinished business? So we've talked about the various pending projects and things that are going on. So if not, as I was thinking, we'll move on to something that we alluded to earlier, and brings, I think as Steve discussed, about encouraging a discussion about the role of the corporator, written in the documents that you've seen. It's long established, but the governance committee is examining that or considering that in its mix of things. So I think, Steve, could you come up a little bit too, and we can talk more about what the group, what the governance committee has thought about, just as a way to see what kinds of issues are being thought about.
Sure, thanks. So, as I said, the governance committee is just getting oriented and beginning our our work. And as we started to focus on the role of the trustees and how the trustees function, I won't say we got sidetracked, but I think members of the committee quickly pointed out that we're really a subset of corporators. Trustees exist as representatives of the corporators in this governance structure. So it's important, we felt, that to understand the role of the corporators, and that's kind of where we started our discussions. And I hope this will just be the beginning of a conversation that we can have with the corporators on how, you all, and I'm a corporator as well, how we all, you know, see our role and our relationship to the library. And I think the guiding principle here is that, we're not suggesting in any way to diminish the role of the corporators or to change it in a, but perhaps to change it in a material way to, get us more effectively engaged in the management and governance of the library. This as a, you know, interesting, and I guess when I was president, we tried to address some of this a couple of times to get the corporators more involved in the budget process, for example. You know, we have a budget, budget development and a budget timeline that doesn't really fit the annual meeting time. So you're really very, very important in the role of, taking a role of how the library moves forward. But for reasons that have to do with schedule, really not able to give input into some of the more important decisions that are facing the library, like budget development, for example, and budgeting. So I think we see the corporators as resources for sure. And it really is a case of how to better engage the corporators in this management, the scheme of management of the library, and to move forward from there. I hope maybe we can share some thoughts here tonight. One thing that the committee has suggested, and hopefully I think certainly intend to act on, although once again, we're very much at the beginning of this conversation as well. I mean, from the committee's perspective, but to serve, you know, for example, we'll try to survey corporators and get your input on how you feel as individual corporators, how you feel you make your contribution to the library, if you feel you contribute at all. And you know, I'll just make an obvious observation. There are 90+ corporators left, you know, and there aren't 90 people in this room. Roger just made a comment to me as we were sitting there that when some critical decisions have faced the library at times, this room has been overflowing and out in the hallway and down the stairs. We don't seem to have that same kind of participation at this point. So I know there's a couple of people in the back of the room kind of sharing those. You know, we don't have, including me, I've been on the board for 9 years now, but I don't have all the institutional memory that went into the last iteration of the corporators and the discussion that led to that. So it would be important to get that institutional memory out and get an understanding of why we are and where we are with the corporators. There are some very mechanical things that have come up. For example, we don't annually or periodically approach the corporators and find out whether you as individuals are still interested in participating as corporators. I mean, I guess I'm not talking to you because you're here tonight, but there are other corporators who aren't here. We never ask, you know, you want to, you know, of an appointment or a selection, and in the bylaws, a selection to be a corporator is a lifetime thing. There's no process, there's no process to basically get off unless you take the initiative to get yourself off. Or as I said, it's a lifetime term. So should there be terms for the corporation? There there are for trustees, but should there be terms for corporate? You all have, or Leslie had sent out the document that exists in bylaws or is part of the procedure on the role of the corporator, and we should take a look at that and see how robust it is. I look at it, most of the responsibilities are related to development, fundraising, and willingness to contribute financially to the library. But perhaps we ought to put more governance related issues in there. So anyways, it's the start of a conversation. You all will get a survey of some nature. We haven't started to put it together yet, but to elicit your thoughts on how you would like to contribute to the library, how you think you might most effectively contribute to the library. I know you all want to contribute to the library, but we've never asked you how do you think that how would you shape that contribution? And it'd be good to get as much input from you as we could on this issue. So I don't want to make this sound like this is my speech. I'm really interested in hearing from you. And it could be just how your ideas of how we could approach it, or even some ideas on how you think the corporators could better, I shouldn't say better, but more effectively contribute to the management of the library.
Yeah, well, I think a survey is a good first step, but then I think when you have the survey, you should have back together to talk about it. Because it's kind of, even if you review the material and thought about it, until you have their response, it's kind of hard to get too specific on where to go. But I suggest, one or more sessions afterwards, either it's large groups or small groups, to get to the next level.
And especially to include the people that are here today.
To include people that are here.
Well, because I think that a lot can be learned from why.
And don't forget those people, all the corporators on Zoom.
Oh, no, you're all learning. I do.
You're here.
I think I was gonna say just what the first gentleman said. An individual survey allows people to really give some thought to why I am a corporator and to be able to put my own ideas out there. Subsequently, having a small group of corporators who wish to, along with a person from the governance committee, to further explore that or to expand on it, or it's just a give and take, a back and forth. And, for some who have been on that are new and some who have been on for a long time, there's history to be shared. I think back when I was asked to be a corporator, kind of the two things that resonated with me was that I would want to be able to make a financial contribution, but also a time and talent contribution.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I able to give of my time and in which way? And that changes over the years. A lot of things come into how we are able to share our time, but that dialogue among corporators, I think, would be very useful in finding out just kind of where do we go from here. And the whole idea of term limits, I hadn't really thought about that, but to think that I'm on for life, I mean, you don't expect that of a lot of our elected officials, so is that something to really think about, that maybe you're expected to maybe be a corporator for a period of time, and then if you wish to continue, that you're asked to re-up or whatever. So.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think we're probably much more effective asking for your money than we are asking asking, for your time and talent. So,
Another issue would be even in the bylaws, it says up to 100 people for corporate, up to 100 ceiling. I mean, is that number effective, or should the number be reduced over time and gradually? I'm just throwing it as another thing that it's unusual to have 100-person organization or entity trying to run something, even supervise it.
so Ruth, who demurred when she said she was here for 20 years,
30.
has been here for 30. Why is it at 100?
Why? Well, that was prior to my time, but I know when I chaired the nominating committee, it was a little bit frustrating. Well, it was more than a little bit frustrating to see that we have 100 corporators, and we really tried to keep it as close to that number as possible. But really, what we saw was that there was a significant number of corporators who weren't involved at all. So we went through a rather tedious process at that time of looking at, trying to figure out some criteria. And, and that's hard. Is it whether or not people come to meetings? Is it whether or not they, make a financial contribution? Is it whether or not they are volunteering at some things? But we had many different factors to look at. And if we really didn't see that we saw corporators who hadn't been to a meeting in a few years. They hadn't seemed to be engaged in any of the fundraising. They didn't speak up at town meetings, which is really important. We don't have that in Bath, but in the other communities. They weren't involved in really anything that we could see with the library. It was a very tedious process then, but we started making telephone calls to those people and saying, are you still interested? One of the difficulties we saw was that, and if people didn't respond, well, I hate to, you kind of stuck with them, given that, this is sort of, a life term. And so if they didn't respond, or they'd say, oh yeah, I'm interested in the library. Well, are you still interested in being a corporator? And, oh yes, I'm interested in being a corporator. I mean, it's hard to sort of move on from
Still didn't come to it.
and yeah, and meetings aren't the only thing, but it is a marker. And we have about a third of the corporators who are involved in this meeting tonight, or here. That's troubling. I mean, most of us have not been to every single meeting, but still, is there a pattern? And I think one of the things we found, especially troubling was that the trustees are chosen from and nominated from the corporators. And so as we were looking then, nominating committee of who we wanted to recommend, and we have a large percentage of the corporators who are just not involved, it becomes more and more difficult. And so, I think it's important. We did a lot of work on developing the paper, the role of corporator, but it still, it leaves some troubling and difficult sorts of circumstances. I don't think 100 is bad, quite honestly. I mean, I thought about that a lot, but, there has to be some more activity, and really it should be more than coming to a meeting once a year. And my guess is, as I look around the room here, people here are involved in more than just a meeting here. I'm not sure I have been so much lately, but I think that's but I'd be very willing to speak with you some more, Steve, about that, because I did a lot of work on that. As did the committee, it wasn't just me.
Yeah, and I remember we went through a discussion, I think you were on the board at the time.
Yeah.
Of approaching members, people who were trustees, or excuse me, corporators, but not active.
Mm-hmm.
And it presents a difficulty to approach them and say, well, we don't want you anymore. I mean,
But we try to take the tip of, do you still want to? You
Yeah.
haven't been involved at all. Do you think would you like to become more engaged? Because that's what we're needing from corporators. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
It's a difficult question. Yeah, Susan?
That's what the time was. I remember when I first came on the board of corporators, there was a rule, which I thought was a very good rule, that speaks to this question of lifetime appointment, but no requirement to show up. I kind of think lifetime appointment's a good thing, because you need the institutional memory and all of that, but it has to come from people who want to stay involved. Anyway, the time was, if you could not come to the Corporator meeting, you had to be excused. You had to call the library director, email the library director and say, I'm going on a trip to France right now, or I have COVID. And if you did not call to excuse, I think that was it.
Well, I think there were two.
There were two
Yes, two unexcused.
Two unexcused absences. But instead of, calling every single person up and saying, are you still interested? That was like, it's in the hands of the Corporator to make the call to say, gosh, I really need to be at this meeting, but I really can't because of X. And have that conversation. And if they don't do that, then they're automatically out of the way. Why aren't there any nominations for the Board of Corporators?
We're at 98, right?
Well, yeah, we're down a couple or three. I think because at that point, we understood that we really wanted to look at the role of the corporators.
Because that's the other thing, as long as you have enough people migrating off, then obviously the nominating committee is looking at a possible future board member, then that's what I remember is people had conversations with me about being interested in your first stop is to be a corporator, and then we go off from the farm team aspect of it. It's really important.
Anyway,
I was going to say something very similar. I was familiar with another organization where if you don't attend the annual meeting or be excused, I think it's for 2 years in a row, then you're considered to resign. Now, there's always, I'm sure you could make exceptions for that if there was someone said, oh, I couldn't because of this, but now I really want to. But it makes it so much easier than calling someone else up and asking if they want to leave. So, I'd suggest rather than worrying too much about the numbers, that we think about something like that. And the role, I think this is a great discussion to have, because what's realistic, I don't know if it's more, if we should put the emphasis on the strategic goal around creating broader, deeper relationships in our various communities. That seems more like a role a discussion we could have, more than maybe being, approving the budget or being in the weeds too much in the budget for 90 some people. Anyway, so that kind of discussion, I think, is a great one to have. And there's some other organizations that we can, look at what they're doing too, in case there's a good idea.
Roger?
Yes, I think one of the basic requirements of a corporator is to make a financial contribution each and every year. And as I understand it, there are a number of corporators that do not. Now, that's going to be a very minimal requirement, and it should be addressed immediately, if not sooner.
It's about
Samantha can tell you
1/3.
exactly.
1/3 of the corporators don't give financially.
How's that for a shocker?
I'm gonna reiterate, part of this is not only what it takes to be a corporator, but also the discussion should, we'd like to focus the discussion, part of the discussion, obviously, on how we can build enthusiasm and get the corporators to give not money, but to give more of themselves to.
Libby wants to say something.
Libby.
Okay.
Yes, okay. I agree with what you're saying, that sometimes people's circumstances change and they still want to be a friend. They still want to work at the library store, but they're not able to give something financially because their life has changed in some way or other. And I don't think we should cut those people out if they are doing something for the library, if they're active in the library. I don't think that that we should eliminate people because they aren't giving financially. That's my personal view. Things happen.
Well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't, Leah, did you have a comment, Sean?
Well, having been on a nominating committee, I guess one of the things that's sort of, we've had situations where you're selecting someone to be a corporator and a trustee and being voted at the same time. And so there are times where it feels like it's contrived. So I'm gonna throw out the question, do you all feel like the corporators are a functioning body, a healthy functioning body? And should they continue in this? I mean, there's discussions along those lines as well, so I'm just throwing that out there.
That's the exposition in you, you know, you get right to the. You think you're breathing. Question.
I guess I would just like to say that, I think being communicated with once a year is not enough. So I think as much as we're all inundated with email already, I would suggest more regular communication, not just through the regular library email. So something more direct to corporators, more than just, here's our meeting date, please be there. But something like, here's corporators, here's a list of the events coming up, please attend one. You know, here's a list of ways that you can help volunteer, you know, there's the envelope stuffing coming up. Because back to Marie's comment about time and talent, I may not have time to do X, Y, and Z, but one of those emails that comes to that group of 90 plus people, I might be able to say, hey, I've got, 20 minutes, I'll go help with this, or that seems like a perfect fit for me. So I think communicating with the corporator group directly through email or some other way would be great.
From who?
Yeah.
From who?
Because I will say, the corporators do get the monthly board packet, and if you read the monthly report, then you know what's going, so that's the way that I can, unless, and I know Samantha sends out when she gets needs for stuffing and things like that, but the corporators do get the monthly board update, the same information that the board gets every month,
So I would argue again, that's an easy one, that doesn't apply to me. I can sort of, it does, but I can easily say, I'm busy with all these kids and work and all these other things, I can file that one, because it's not something I have to attend to right away. So if it's a more direct to this group of people to say, here's an outreach opportunity, that would appeal more anyway to me. And I don't know who would communicate that, we have a liaison, I don't know, I don't want to throw Libby under the bus, but.
We also have board
She's
members
raising
from
her
different
hand.
communities.
Libby's gonna.
I have a suggestion. Since the corporators are all identified by which town they belong to, that we do something, that we have smaller groups try to get together. For example, the Georgetown people who are corporators, to have maybe 2 or 3 times a year to get together to talk about what they are doing or what they can do from Georgetown's point of view. And if we do that in smaller groups, I think then people will feel like they have more of a voice, and corporators might be more amenable to meeting in person with their neighbors in a less formal way, as a way of getting them involved more. Kind of a grassroots approach.
No, interesting.
Something to consider.
Yeah, building on that, I wonder too, if that's an opportunity to help enhance the municipal funding. And outreach. I know in Woolwich every year, there's always a real challenge, so perhaps if the community, the corporators from the community had some kind of effort or more public facing event, so that other people in the community can really see the connection between the community and the patent free.
Yeah, we have done that, in the past, but it's as Living others have kind of suggested, it's been one, a one and done kind of situation, we'll reach out to corporators and say, get focused on this, and that's the first and last communication on it. There's no build up. That's good. Yeah, that's a good.
If we're gonna have a discussion about corporators, at some point, does it make sense to have a discussion about the relationship with the Friends and the youth group, advisor group, and any other groups that are out there? Because it seems like we're talking about not having enough interest to sustain meetings or to select a president, or something like that. And at some point, we may want to look at those things together in a way, not to make them together, but to say how they interact with one another. If we're gonna make this efficient.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many members of the Friends, maybe,
I know.
are corporators or active.
Oh, that I don't know. There's like 145 Friends members, and many of them are corporators and donors. And the Friends are a committee, so separate than the corporators were our rooting, our governing body. The Friends are just a committee of library.
And that's because they give money, right? I mean, that's primarily.
That's part of,
Yeah.
what they do, right? Most people don't look at that, but yeah, they commit to us each year an annual gift, and then they have the.
They're not their own 50, they don't have their 501c3, so they are under the umbrella of the.
Take a couple more.
Yeah.
I think the survey is important, but I would suggest directing some of the questions, because I think when there's just an open-ended question, what could you contribute? People just sort of like, oh, I don't know. But if it could be, a lot of different suggestions that are there and another, that may help. Because what I found is people aren't really sure yet. I mean, I'd like to, really support the library, but I mean, what could I do? It may be reading a book discussion. It could be, so many different things, but I think that would help. And it is hard when you think about the financial contribution. I mean, we have big contributors who are not a corporator. They don't have to be a corporator if they're, giving lots of money. We have people who are very involved as volunteers in the library who aren't corporators. So I don't think that those are just the only things that make a difference for being a corporator.
Yeah, no, and those are tangibles that we can identify. I think I think, at least from my perspective, we're talking about something a little bit less defined at this point. The corporators are part of the governance structure for the library. And how can we improve the ability of corporators to make the contribution into that structure, into the governance of and management of the library than they're doing at present.
The other thing I just want to say is that I wonder, what's the most effective way to get that survey out to people so they'll notice it? And I have to say, I get so many emails, I miss a lot of things that I shouldn't be missing. And, I pay attention to the mail. I mean, the US mail, it's old fashioned, and I know there's a cost associated with it, but I wonder if that may be better. I mean, you folks can discuss that as to what you think you could do, but,
Just think
well, Peggy.
Oh, I suggested, another possible issue is that, trustees have to be chosen from corporators. And does that limit perhaps who we might choose for trustees? So,
You can choose them at the same time.
right, but I mean, it's just a question. I mean, does that, you have to be automatically become a corporator to be a trustee?
So I just wanted to throw this out, again, institutional memory and speaking as a veteran of the Troubles. Another role that the corporators have is to call the board out. That we are a watchdog organization. So that's also something to bear in mind. It's not something you ever have to hope to see or do, but things can happen. And so that is another function that corporators have, is to be the governing board.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, as I said, I mean, this effort is not to look for a way to diminish the role of the corporators. But to better, perhaps, I say better, that's my, you know, that's a subjective statement, I guess, but to improve, to kind of focus and get that engagement of the corporators in that governance a little bit more focused than.
It just isn't, it's so, if we bring people on with the idea that they're going to become trustees, and then we allow them to stay, isn't this sort of also too kind of an alumni group, like people in this room are uniquely experienced? They're not inexperienced people. Their experience may be older, but they're not inexperienced. Just that's something, you know, to bear in mind.
Yes. Okay, we're gonna take one more, not to shut it off, you know, maybe just.
I think one thing that would be interesting is to have the trustees and the corporators to do something that they need done. Really, it should be an item on the agenda. What would the trustees like to have corporators do? Either, you know, a specific task that you're thinking about, that somebody has a particular skill at, go for it then.
I think I want to try to wrap it up, Steve, and just talk about what you'd like to do for next steps. You got an idea, there's clearly keen interest in more interaction and a survey and so forth.
Well, we're gonna meet next month, we're gonna do monthly. But that'll.
Required.
The nominee or keep going back to the governance committee, you know, meets monthly. At our next meeting, we'll discuss the comments that you've offered today. And we'll move forward with, I think again, it seemed to be the sense of the committee at its last meeting to do a survey of some sort. And get it out and try to put some concrete suggestions and ideas out there that we can move forward. Okay.
It was a good discussion.
I do appreciate your
You're insulting a lot.
Thank you very much.
Overdue. All right. That concludes the agenda, the formal agenda, unless there's something else that someone else would like to bring up. Roger.
I move we adjourn.
That was my next statement.
I've got to go home and face my wife on this.
Okay, all in favor? Anyone dare to oppose? Thank you. Thank you all.